Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabe Cohen. I'm GuideStar's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome to our first Impact Call of 2018. We're going to be reporting back on our results, mainly from Q4 of 2017. So thank you very much for joining us. Just a couple kind of housekeeping things for us here. The first is that we try to make these Impact Calls as interactive as possible. And the best way for you to participate is to just ask us questions through the questions pane right there in the GoToWebinar interface. You can also tweet us if you'd like at #GSImpactCall. And we're going to save about 15 minutes, hopefully, at the end of this call, 10 to 15 minutes to answer questions from the audience. Also, we're going to record the webinar today, and we'll make sure to email that out to everybody afterwards. Great, so you've already met me. Joining us as well today will be Adrian Bordone, our Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, and Ms. Kusairi, our Vice President of Strategy and Finance. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what an impact call is, and then we're going to talk a bit about what's new and what's coming soon here at GuideStar. We're going to then report back on our results. We have a lessons learned, and then we're going to go on to questions at the end from the audience. So please, at any time, feel free to ask questions right there on the GoToWebinar interface. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about the purpose of this call and who we are. So the purpose of this call was really born from the idea of a quarterly results call from a publicly traded company. And the idea is really to get information about what we're doing here at GuideStar to our stakeholders, to our donors, to our funders, to the nonprofits out there as quickly as possible and in a meaningful way. So with that, I just want to take a minute here to talk about what we do at GuideStar. And our tagline is better data for better decisions for a better world. And what we mean by that is that we want to get better data out there to the nonprofit universe so that as many people as possible can make better decisions about the social sector, and that will then lead to a better world. So we have this diagram where we tried to simplify it, but this goes to show as to how many different types of stakeholders we have. On the left-hand side, you're going to see all of the different types of inputs. So, you all, the nonprofits out there, foundations, are providing information either through the IRS or through one of our partners or directly through GuideStar now. That's then getting out to all of the users on the right-hand side through two different channels. You'll see in the green circle there, we had over 9 million people come to GuideStar.org last year to make informed decisions about their giving or about charitable donations, whatever they may be doing. But that information, our database, also then travels through our partners and their channels. That may be community foundations, it may be grants management software, or technology platforms or social media platforms. And then that's getting to tens of millions more users out there in the nonprofit ecosystem. We're going to talk a little bit about a new way that we're getting out to more partners later. Adrian's going to get to that. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what's new and what's coming soon. And first, I want to talk about a fun little campaign that we're running right now. It's called the Nonprofit Winter Games. And that started just about last week. And the whole idea is to spread the word about why it's important for nonprofits to update their profiles on GuideStar. So just want to talk a little bit about the different games that we're running during this. So the first time medalist is going on right now. So if you're a nonprofit and you don't have a seal, the time to get a seal is right now. If you go on and before the 16th earn a seal of transparency on GuideStar, then you'll be registered to win $200. Following that up, we're going to have a coaching session, which will be on the 20th. And you can register to that by going to guidestar.org/webinars. That's a great place for you to ask any questions that you may have about updating your organization's specific profile or the importance of updating your profile, any of those things. Next, we're going to have the ski jump. That's going to run from February 19th to the 23rd. And if your organization doesn't have a seal yet, you can update your profile, jump ahead to one of those levels, if you will pardon my bad pun, and you can earn one of 8 prizes ranging from $100 to $500. Lastly, we're going to have a relay, and that's going to be a social media type campaign. To learn more about any of these, just go ahead and Google GuideStar Winter Games, and that will bring up a page that tells you all about it. Also, pretty soon, within the next month or so, we're going to be launching our 2018 Seals of Transparency. There's no new fields to fill out this year, but there is some requirements to get data that's as fresh as possible up to your profile. So when you're looking at your profile this year, if you're a nonprofit, what you're going to want to make sure that you do is that you include information in both the silver and platinum sections that's from within the last 2 years. And that's really important. When we're out there talking to foundations and to donors, one of the first things that they ask us about is how fresh that data is on nonprofit organizations. So that's one of the big shifts that we're making this year in order to get that 2018 Seal of Transparency. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrian Bordone, who's going to talk a little bit about our DEI efforts.
Thanks, Gabe. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As we transition from the Winter Games strategy and this attempt to make sure you're understanding how valuable your GuideStar profile is, I want to dive into some specific data sets that are increasingly relevant for us at GuideStar, for the sector, and frankly, for anyone who's paying attention to the world right now. Our efforts to strengthen our diversity, equity, and inclusion data sets through GuideStar.org are really starting to pick up pace, and we want to sort of share some highlights of the progress we're making with you. So just as a reminder, this information sits on your GuideStar profile if you are a nonprofit organization, if you've chosen to voluntarily provide it. And this information is not required to achieve any GuideStar seal, but we are increasingly seeing a high level of participation from our nonprofit organizations, and would encourage anyone who acts on some of the inspiration that you hear today to go in and make sure you're providing this information on your GuideStar profile. Just a reminder for those to whom this is new information, we are asking that you capture de-identified and aggregate information about gender, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability status for board, staff, and volunteers. We're also asking that you tell us if your organization is focused on one or more diversity strategies. Again, this is voluntary information. We are giving organizations the opportunity to capture and reflect where they stand relative to these things, and increasingly the donor community is looking at this information and trying to make sure we are properly supporting organizations as they increase their diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide. So to date, just some quick updates. We have just over 9,000 organizations who've shared this voluntary information. You see in the second category of those who've shared information, we have a breakdown of what types of information they're sharing. You notice that you can share any subset of that information with us. There's no requirement that you share it all. You could share one or more of those data elements. We see gender being, not surprisingly, the highest percentage of information that we're seeing from organizations that are submitting that. We also see that there are nearly 7,000 of the 9,000 organizations that have shared the information on diversity. They are also sharing evidence of their strategies. This is the diversity practices side of the equation. We're thrilled that we have over 300 funders who are also participating and sharing their commitment to this data and diversity practices. And a quick note, as you see at the bottom, as we get a higher and higher data set, as our N increases, we'll increasingly be able to illuminate lessons learned and insights. And one of those that we see here is that the representation of women in leadership roles across those organizations who are submitting is at 55%. We will, over time, be able to track baselines and incremental improvement on that and many of the other details you see here. Next slide. So we have two slides that are following. One is what if you're participating in today's call and you are a organization that is a grant-making or funding organization. The second slide that we'll highlight is what you as an organization can do if you are a nonprofit grant-seeking organization. So to start, we are asking that our funders lead by example, share this information, make sure your nonprofits in your community know this is important to you. make sure to the ability, whatever ability you can, that you've shared that this is a free resource that your nonprofit organizations can contribute to so that we can learn these lessons. Also make sure, if possible, that you're leading by example and providing that diversity, equity, and inclusion information for your philanthropic enterprise. We also have a active funding requirement today that's in part sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation. If you are a funder, we are asking that you consider signing a letter of support for GuideStar as we continue to move along this effort. That is an important demonstration of commitment and momentum in the sector. If you're on today's call and you are a funder and you would consider signing a letter of support, we have some boilerplate documents that we'll send you. We'd love for you to consider that. One note at the bottom, I'll say it twice since it's super important. We do have a webinar coming up where we'll do a deep dive in this topic on March 26th. Please save that date and we'll make sure you get an invitation here in the next few days. Next slide. So if you're a nonprofit organization, again, please, our universal inspiration is that we ask you to claim and update your profile as the Winter Games are focused on, et cetera. But please make sure that you consider adding that voluntary information related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Earn that GuideStar seal, as Gabe highlighted at the beginning of his presentation. Share this with other organizations in your community. This is increasingly a great source of intelligence for you as a practitioner, as well as the funding community who's looking at you and other organizations in your community. And where possible, please try to make sure you're highlighting that this is where funders can find this information on you. It is a set of data that is increasingly valuable and taken into consideration in giving decisions, and we would encourage you to contribute it in the same way you're transparently sharing much of your other information. Second reminder, just that webinar on March 26th, that's for both funders and nonprofits. We would certainly encourage you to sign up, at least put a save the date on your calendar now. Next slide. So that's sort of progress we're making on the API front. We also want to announce that in early January, we released a refresh of our APIs, or Application Programming Interface. This is that tool set that Gabe mentioned that really accentuates and amplifies the use and availability of GuideStar and our nonprofit partners' data across a wide array of our technology and funding partners. So this is, as Gabe mentioned, there are 9 million users who gain access to nonprofit information through GuideStar.org in 2017. We estimate another 20 million who are coming in and learning more about the causes and organizations they care about through our partner network. Again, this is facilitated by and made possible by our APIs. Next slide. Here's a quick snapshot of some of the partners with whom we work that ingest our data, the GuideStar data that's provided through that slide that we saw a moment ago that Gabe highlighted, coming both from the IRS as well as organizations themselves and a variety of stakeholders. But we have well over 200 today, 232 organizations, many of whom you see represented here, who really value the intelligence that you as a community of practice and a community of funders are providing to us, and they want to put that data and intelligence in front of their audience, their users, in order to build that bridge between those audiences and the causes that we care about in the sector. Next slide. So the refresh, or the next generation APIs that we released about a month ago, are really focused on strengthening a core value and capability that we were already providing. But essentially what we want to make sure of those folks who are familiar with this functionality in the past or familiar with our GuideStar.org, we really wanted to align that the search and results capabilities that many folks are already familiar with through the GuideStar.org Pro level search with the API access. So we've streamlined and made it more consistent and predictable for users. We also have gone deeper on a number of core metrics, particularly financial fields and some calculated metrics, so folks can find the information they need when making decisions in these other portals. We've also made sure that the infrastructure that's behind these APIs is strengthened and improved for our users. Increasingly, we've aligned the testing, evaluation, what historically was a sandbox environment, with the new APIs. We've got a tremendous source of documentation today, making it easier than ever for technologists to take advantage of this functionality. And we've doubled down on our infrastructure commitment, making sure that this is as dependable as any other source of data and intelligence for the sector. Next slide. So those were some characteristics of the refresh writ large. What we've done is rolled out what we are now calling essentials. This is sort of the must-have for organizations who want to learn more about the nonprofit sector. This is 40-plus fields of data that are the essentials for anyone who wants to do an effective search and find and learn a little bit about nonprofit organizations. We've also refreshed, next slide, Ariel, our charity check. This is perhaps our most brand recognized API, really the industry standard for determining that an organization is in good standing and eligible to receive a tax deductible or is a tax exempt organization and eligible to receive that contribution. And then thirdly, we have really strengthened what we are now referring to as our Premier API. And in doing so, we've combined all the features and functionality from Essentials as well as Charity Check and additional fields, giving us a total field count well over 200 fields, in fact, over 230 fields of data in the Premier API. So this is really the most robust offering that GuideStar has ever provided, and it is complete and comprehensive for partners who are looking to gain the most complete access to the GuideStar data set. Ms., I'll hand it over to you for an update on some of our results for 2017.
Great. Thanks so much, Adrian. There's a lot of information there to digest. I'll transition here to focus on our programmatic results as well as our financial results. As I do so, we always start, when we think about our results, and looking at our theory of change. And similar to the diagram on the data hub and the flow of information in the sector, we think about our work from left to right here on this chart, and you'll see GuideStar's activities organized there in the top section in blue, as well as the direct user outcomes that we hope to influence, as well as, as we are just one of many players in the infrastructure space supporting the nonprofit sector overall. And so there's other activities by other important nonprofit organizations and the user outcomes they influence, getting to that better world, eventually, as Gabe mentioned, and looking at the field outcomes of more giving, smarter giving, less waste and high performance among donors as well as nonprofits. And we are going to focus our results here on that first column under activities, and I will take you through one by one. Great. On this page, we look at the data that we have. On the top, you'll see the quantity of data, and that has been growing over time, ending at the end of Q4 with over 3.5 billion pieces of data or data points. When we dig further and look at the quality of that data, we see here's a summary of all the profiles that Gabe had walked us through, new ones through the Winter Games as well as through other efforts. Q4, there was a huge jump, and a lot of that was a result of giving season as well as Giving Tuesday. So we had great promotional partners and great initiatives that our team ran to really have that number ramp up to over 48,000 nonprofits sharing information with us in various different ways. And at that highest level, the quantitative program results in our platinum seals is nearing 4,000 organizations, which we're very excited about. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see some metrics regarding our tools and resources. And as with everything that we do at GuideStar, we always continue to be better. And so we're also looking to improve the way that we measure our performance. And this is an area that definitely has received a lot of focus. You'll see here the breakdown of customer growth in each product category. Adrian spent a lot of time talking about our platform products, the APIs, but a big focus, and that was recently launched, but a big focus for Q4 last year was our data services products. And so you'll see the greatest growth in that area in Q4. Overall, our searches on GuideStar continue to increase as well, and we're likely going to be including one or two more new metrics to measure our performance in our tools and resources category. On the next slide, you'll see information with regards to our reach. The top two bars show our users, so cumulative registered users over time, as well as the number of unique users in the fourth quarter, and those have been continuing to grow. All of this progress in Q4, as I'd mentioned, similar to our profile increases, really resulted from Giving Season and the partnerships that we had around Giving Tuesday. So those are great progress, and we're very happy with those results. On the next slide, with regards to our thought leadership, we really saw an increase as well in the number of blog views that we had. There was a great blog post by one of our key partners, CrowdRise, and that received the highest number of views in the blog post, in any blog post that we've had. So we're very pleased with the interest that that blog post received around fundraising and challenge fundraising campaigns. Similarly, on earned media placement as well as blog views, there's a lot of traffic to the site, mainly around Giving Tuesday, and I know that Gabe will share a lesson learned on that as well for us at the end. Switching gears to financial results. Overall, if you see that information on the third and fourth bars on our bottom line results, unrestricted net assets as well as total net assets, we essentially met our budget targets. Even though if you were on past impact calls, you heard that we were experiencing lower than expected and lower than budgeted revenue, and so we had a savings and expense reduction exercise, which enabled us to meet the budgeted unrestricted net assets target that we had. So we're ending the year on a positive note, and we are very pleased with that as well. Lastly, in terms of our balance sheet, you'll see that our cash levels were about $2.4 million, about 2.5 times coverage on average expenses. And the interesting thing here is that our balance sheet grew by nearly 50% at the end of 2017 versus 2016. So I'm sure as many of you are also gearing up to complete your audit this quarter or sometime next quarter, we are gearing up for that as well. So we're happy to report these results not only to our board and to all of you, but also looking over them with our auditors soon. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Gabe.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Before we talk a little bit about our lessons learned, just want to one more time ask if anybody has any questions, please share them now through the questions pane on GoToWebinar. So as Ms. mentioned, we saw a pretty significant increase in traffic right around Giving Season. And what you're seeing here is our daily traffic from Google Analytics. And you can see on the very right-hand side there, that was Giving Tuesday. We had over 90,000 users just on Giving Tuesday alone, which is the highest daily traffic that we've ever had at GuideStar. And we had millions of users over that last kind of month of the year that's typically known as Giving Season. So there's kind of an internal lesson learned here for our organization, but I think it's probably applicable to a lot of other nonprofits as well. And that is just to be prepared for the end of the year. At one point in time, we were getting over 700 requests a day for nonprofits to come and claim their profiles. And our nonprofit support team had to literally work overtime to make sure that we were meeting the needs of our nonprofit users. So we were almost taken aback by how many nonprofits were interested in updating their profiles at the end of the year, which is a fantastic thing. But the reminder for us and for nonprofits is just to get started on that a little bit earlier in the year. So just make a mental note that when it starts to get to September, October, that sort of thing, to start thinking about the things that you're going to need to do during giving season to be ready. So we hope that everyone had a very successful giving season this year as well. So questions. We've had a couple questions come in here. The first, Suzanne was asking a little bit about more information for the prizes in the Winter Games. And yeah, so just wanted to clarify a few things. So go, as I said, just Google GuideStar Nonprofit Winter Games and you can see all of the details there. But depending on the different game that you're participating in, you'd have a chance to win between $100 and $500. And those prizes will be chosen at random. But again, just GuideStar Winter Games and you'll find out a little bit more. Another question here, and Adrian, I'm thinking that you may be able to answer this, is just to talk a little bit about some of our partners that are using our APIs and how that works, how that helps the end user, what they're seeing, and how they're using those APIs.
Sure, thanks, Gabe. So first, it's important to remember that in many cases, GuideStar serves as the mechanism where a nonprofit can choose to consent to share their information across this wide array of partners. So very often, as you just mentioned, relative to end-of-year giving, we want to make sure that your information is being shared with Amazon Smile, with these partners. So at its most fundamental level, recognize that your profile and your presence on GuideStar is an opportunity for you to communicate not just with folks who are visiting GuideStar.org, but with this vast array of other folks who are taking advantage of our APIs. And who are those folks? Well, one example is Vanguard Charitable, and I can't imagine anyone on this call would say, I don't want to show up on the list when folks at Vanguard Charitable are looking to establish where they want to provide their grant making for that year. Another is Foundant, a grants management software provider that is increasingly having a great footprint in the community foundation space. These are organizations that have an audience who are interested in learning more about the nonprofit sector. That audience may not be aware of what GuideStar is and what GuideStar does, but these and 230 other organizations like them have recognized that if they put this information in front of a prospective donor at the right time, as you just shared, the giving season is very often that right time, then it's more likely that that person, when presented with the intelligence that we offer through our API, will be able to make a more informed decision and will likely increase their confidence in the sector as a whole because they're learning lessons as they go as a user group. So really, in many ways, we're just trying to amplify the voice of the nonprofit sector, put your information in front of as many people as possible at the right time so that if they have an interest in giving or learning more about you, they can gain access to that, not just through GuideStar.org, but through the web environment where they are currently active, like Vanguard Charitable, like Foundant, like Volunteer Match, and hundreds of others.
Yeah, and I just heard a great story. I was talking with a grants manager at the Knight Foundation recently who they've integrated our Charity Check API through their grants management system, and they were saying that they have about a 15x time savings when it comes to due diligence now that they're using Charity Check, which is pretty incredible when you kind of multiply that times the number of grants that an organization like that would be giving. The great part about that is that not only do they have internal time savings, but he was saying they're able to save time on their grantees because they're not going to them and asking for as much information as well. So that's a great way that our APIs are really helping two different sides of the sector. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Adrian said, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. And we will follow up with an email to any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.